Hello people, and welcome to the first episode of the new Cities Skylines Vanilla Let's Play, the Cities Skylines Build Guide 2. Hope you're having a wonderful day. First of all, at the start of this series, we will run through some housekeeping stuff for the series. I am playing with every single DLC and content creator pack that has released for Cities Skylines. If you are missing any of these, there is an affiliate link down below to Instant Gaming, where they are all ridiculously cheap now and you can pick them up for super low cost. And it does help support the channel, which is always nice. Coming into Content Manager, there are a few mods active. I will run over what these are. The only ones that you need to worry about are the forest brush, so I can paint down forests, and then also the prop line tool as well, and unlimited oil and ore. The rest of them are mods I use for recording. You do not need to worry about them, and it won't really affect the gameplay. We are going to be playing on a brand new map, and this is the Bay of Rivers from Sidai's Map Pack 2, which released in December of 2022. And it's really wonderful. It's a nice map, it's temperate themed, and yeah, it's going to be a nice one. It was a very close call between Winding River and Land of the Isles, but they're very similar to what will replace Ilos, so we don't really want to be doing the same sort of city at the same time. But either way, let's dive into Bay of Rivers and see what we're working with at the start of the Build Guide 2, shall we? So welcome to the Bay of Rivers, everyone. This is a really pretty map, of course, made by Sidai in the recent map pack. It's a temperate theme, and I'm also using the cold relight that came with the update last month from Paradox. I'll show you how you can apply this, but that's why it looks a little bit bleaker. This was a nice idea from our subscriber Casino to perhaps give the map a slightly more colder feel, like it is perhaps in a colder part of the world. And I think that the look does a nice job of sort of achieving this vibe. Either way, you can kind of get a lay of the land, lots of rivers, lots of rail already here for us to make use of, and some fertile land as well. I'd also like your guys' opinions on what you think this map should also be called, so please get your name suggestions down in the comments below for this city. I will let you guys name this city in particular. So yeah, please get them down in the comments below, and we will choose the most voted at the start of next episode. But either way, let's start a brand new vanilla city in Cities Skylines, shall we? Okay everyone, so let's talk about the vision for the Build Guide 2. So looking at this opening tile here, we have some hills over in the east, which is very nice. We can definitely get some farms around the bottom of these and do some nice things. I've also got a river with a really nice detailed sort of castle ruin on it, which I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys think this should be. Maybe we'll do a poll for this on the Patreon page. And then the rivers kind of come down here. And then we emerge into some really interesting landscapes, and I'm envisioning one day that we will have the Build Guide downtown along these stretches, just to have rivers flowing through such a high density metropolitan area like that. I think should lead to a very cool looking downtown. Of course, once it's in, but that is many moons away. We are a long way from the downtown, so first of all, let's get our brand new city started, shall we? So the beautiful Sidai has left us in a roundabout already, which is super handy. You might just have sort of two highway roads dead that look like this, that just sort of finish. It's a simple process to hook them into a roundabout if you'd like to mimic the start. Otherwise, you can start the city however you want. So whilst we're building, I want to keep the game on pause, of course, so we don't burn through our weekly income. And then really, I just want to start drawing up from this road here, and I'm going to come alongside it and snap into the grid snapping for right now, and I want to be into that first grid square, and then let's come up by 10 either side. I think a little something like that should work quite tastefully. Then what I'd like to do is come back onto our freeform road. Now I'm keeping this road in position here to lock the roundabout in place. If we lose that road, the roundabout will warp, so we want to make sure that we can just slide in there. That's nice. So using those freeform tools, I just want to get sort of a happy, sensible curve in like that, and then I can delete that middle road, and then that's just going to allow me to feed off these two roads off the roundabout a little more efficiently. So you might be wondering, why on earth are we using two roads? And that's because I'm actually going to split this roundabout, and indeed a good sort of portion and entrance of the city into a one-way network, which are really handy for distributing traffic and just controlling flow. And I kind of want this eventually to run into the downtown, so I want to sort of mark out now initially where this is going to go. So because Sidai has built the interchange for us, we're actually going to save a whole bunch of money on upkeep because we don't need to build our own service interchange. So we can be a little bit more bolder with the road layout, I think. So let's come in, we're going to start drawing these roads out now. Let's start bringing everyone down. And I want to maintain this distance of 4 tiles between these 2 roads at all times. So no matter what we do, we have to make sure that we have those tile spaces available. So let's just see where this wants to go. I think I'm feeling maybe taking it through this forest here. I think we'll sort of bring it through. Let's just forest brush a little bit that way. Again, I'm just using these small quality of life mods that really save me time when recording. I think a lot of people will sort of appreciate the functionality of Propline Tool and Forest Brush, etc. Okay, so let's do a big 20 curve here in this road, and we'll start to meander it away. We're going to come back onto road guideline as we do the same thing here. We'll hit that guideline and bring it back up. And then we know that as we continue straight, we should maintain those 4 tiles at all times between this one-way network. And then we can now bring this to change our directions. Everyone should be happy with that. That's going to be good, and let's just give ourselves a little bit more breathing room. We'll come out by 10 either side there. Fantastic. Cool. So let's go into some larger roads now. Let's go ahead and grab a 4-lane road, and I definitely want to upgrade these 2 remaining roads off the roundabout into 4-lane. One of them may become 6-lane eventually, but for right now we just want that 4-lane capacity. And again, I just want to see where this goes. So I don't just want to curve a road for the sake of it looking organic. I want it to kind of curve for a reason. So I think just the main road here is going to have a really nice rundown and eventually some sort of sightline to that castle and an eventual riverside waterfront that will lie in this part of the map over here. So I think that's going to be quite fun. We'll obviously get to this probably in episode 2 when we come to introduce some waterfront action. Definitely get some trams along here, perhaps some sort of pedestrian roads. And that's something I'm really looking forward to for this series as well. With the new trams and the pedestrian streets and stuff, I'd really like to get a strong sort of tram DLR system going to help move people around, but we'll cover that when we get to it. Tremendous. So let's now come back into our small roads, and of course we got a whole bunch of free roads, so we can now use them to construct sort of a road hierarchy system that we want to work with. So I'm going to grab the 2-lane road with a median. And just where these roads straighten back out again from that curve motion that we did, I'm going to start bringing this up here. And because we're all within the same tile configuration here, we're not going to get any broken zoning because we did that perfect 10 curve and then the grids are orientated to that perfect curve. So that's going to be handy for bringing in zonings when we need them. So let's bring this road all the way down. Let's go for about there. And again, I have a vision here that I want sort of a little bit of green belt, some live oaks here, a little bit of dirt pathway to hug between the one-way system and the actual starting suburb itself. So let's go ahead now and let's go for like 10 and then 9 and 8. So we'll get an 8 curve in here. And then we'll keep this road going straight. Again, we can see how we're lining up with those tiles because we're maintaining sort of perfect curves all off the same sort of grid orientation, if you like, which is helping us. So just sort of bringing in some curves and lines against current roads to get things started here, and now we can draw in some really basic suburbia frames that's going to allow us to hold our first houses. And with these, of course, as we come to explore the build guide and this city grows, we will do more interesting things with suburbia, more interesting designs, different sort of ideas and concepts and themes. But for right now, I really want to be maximizing the zoning spaces. So I'm just going to be bringing in lots of pretty basic roads. And why don't we even go for a little curve here too? We can go for a little 4 curve. Not everything has to be rigid and straight. That should do as a job. And then maybe a couple more extensions out this one. That should be plenty enough for what we need. Just for getting started and getting that first milestone hit. Tremendous. Alright, so let's turn our attention now toward the industry side of things, because we are going to need to plan this, of course. So it looks to be some fertile land here, but of course we don't unlock industries until 480, or farming's even a little bit later than that, I think, isn't it? So we'll definitely do an episode on farming at some point in the build guide too, of course. But for right now, I'd just like to extend this arterial road, and I'm envisioning at some point that this will probably hold some sort of mini highway slip ramp just to help alleviate the pressure into the industrial area. I often find with traffic in cities, it's not a case of having to use traffic manager or any sort of fancy mods, the vast majority of the time, you just need to alleviate pressure. If everyone's trying to come through this junction, it's the only way into the city, then you need to give them another way in. So if we can prepare that in advance, then that's going to help us out in the long run, which is great. And then we also want to draw in a little bit of service area here, don't we? Let's just bring down some pretty rudimentary frames. Again, as with all my cities, the starting industrial area, it never lasts. It's only there as a temporary sort of placeholder, because it looks crap. It's not good. It takes a long time to make it look good in vanilla, but we will do something with it, but it's not going to remain here for the duration, of course. So I'm just going to drop in a coal power plant for right now. You could go for wind turbines if you want to, but the only place they're really effective in the starting tile is right where I'm going to have my houses, so it's not really efficient for me, but you can use them if you want. So I'm going to have that one there. Let's have a look at some water now. So of course we also want a sewage treatment plant as well. I'm using the one from Sunset Harbour. If you don't have that, then of course you will need to use the actual water pump itself out into the river, making sure that the sewage is downstream from your water pump, if you're using that as well, of course. But we're not going to be using the vanilla stuff straight away. So in this series, I will use a lot of the DLC stuff. If you're like brand new to the game and you've kind of no concept of how things work, or you don't really know what comes with what DLC, I highly suggest that you check out my last series, the Noob's Guide. It will walk you through everything that comes with each DLC. So probably worth checking out if you're absolutely brand new to the game. That playlist will be linked down below. So I'm going to place this water tower at the head of these sort of roundabout where the one-way road splits off here. And then we're going to do efficient water pipes. Of course, you can place them under the roads. Something I used to do all the way back in Fremwood is place the pipes under the roads. And of course, it's an enormous waste of nodes to do it like this. Yes, it looks very cool. And yes, it's true to real life. It's where the road pipes, where the water pipes should be. Obviously for maintenance purposes, you see manholes so they can get down to fix them. But my gameplay style has evolved now to the point where this becomes an enormous waste of nodes, and I will eventually use 81 tile 2 mod to remove them, so we don't need them anymore. But you can do it for however you like to do it. You know, there's no right or wrong way. But because I know I'm eventually going to end up deleting every pipe in the city, I'm just going to do them in very sort of rigid rows so we get as much coverage from wherever we want to go. If it lands under a road, that's fine. If it doesn't, who cares? Alright, there we go. Cool. So now I've got some just base water laid down for where all my zoning's going to be. We have power and sewage available. And that should be everything. We can now zone up. And I think we're probably at a good place actually now to come ahead into our budget tab. We're going to bring down our daytime power and water sliders. Bring those right down because we'll be overproducing right now. And then we just want to start zoning up. So you notice that we've eaten all of our budget, like literally our entire budget has gone. Some people will prefer to start a city with dirt roads. That's absolutely fine. That does work, but I don't need to. Like, yes, we'll be in the red for a little bit, but it's going to be okay. Cool. So I'm going to start zoning up all these spaces here. I am going to leave some little areas free here in the zoning that you'll notice, so we can get pathways through here for little buffs in walkability, which will always be appreciated. But otherwise, I think we are actually now ready to hit play. Our one-way system is configured correctly. You'll notice I'm playing on right-hand drive as well, right-hand traffic. Just how I learned to play the game. But either way, let's play the game and watch the city grow. It's a wonderful map, isn't it, from Sidai? He's done just a fantastic job of doing this. Oh, just remembered actually, no, we do need water, powers, don't we? That was nearly a very close one, so let's bring some power lines over. Those ones here, and then we'll get these guys growing in here. Cool, so looking for 4 deep patterns at the minute. We can specifically zone this, but for right now, I just want to get those taxpayers in and start getting some vanilla houses growing. It is always tremendously exciting. I think there's few things as satisfying and as exciting as a new vanilla build. There's no complicated mods to get to grips with, no mod issues, it's just Cities Skylines as it was intended to be. Yes, that can be a ball ache for some people, because Lord knows Move It makes a massive difference on all the other things that we know and love, but there is something quite charming, I think, isn't there, about vanilla? It really is. Cool, so for the start of the game here, yeah, you'll notice that we're minus money now, we're losing money, but that's absolutely fine. It doesn't mean anything. You're going to come out of it. don't panic, it's alright. Just keep zoning, just keep an eye on these demands here along the bottom, and then we'll slowly see that we will just crawl out of it. We've now got a little bit of commercial demand coming in, so let's go ahead and get some commercial along this main road. And we've also got a tiny bit of industry demand creeping up now as well, so let's go ahead and satisfy a bunch of this. Again, all of this stuff here on the right side of the roundabout is temporary. We don't like that. This looks very bad. We will spend an episode on how to make our industries look good, of course, in the build guide. So if you haven't seen, I guess we'll just take a little bit of time to talk here while we're sort of waiting for things to grow and sort of waiting for our first sims to arrive. If you haven't seen the original build guide, it was kind of my first process at a tutorial build series. The whole process here is to get away from just zoning a city and into building a city is the idea I want to kind of teach everyone behind this series. Is to kind of think more in the concept of builds rather than zones, if that makes sense. So, for example, I know eventually I want a sort of maybe nightlife, more commercially orientated waterfront to sit out on this river. So I can definitely plan in sort of a waterfront nightlife build here, rather than thinking, this is a river that I want commercial zoning on. It's kind of a little bit generic and nondescript. If we give it a theme and a style, maybe tie something into it, like a tram, then we can give it a nightlife waterfront. And continue in that thought process as the series grows and develops and becomes bigger and more grandiose, etc. It's a really wonderful map, isn't it? I love all the rivers. We'll definitely get out here once we pop the 81 tiles. We'll fill the 9 vanilla tiles first before we introduce 81 for any console people following along. We realise you don't always have total access to it. Cool, so let's keep these zonings coming in. Let's get a little bit of commercial over here on the corner, see if we can jump that power through. And then keep that industry demand coming in as well. It doesn't really matter how horrifically zoned it is right now, because it will be deleted eventually anyway. So you'll see now, just as we leave the game on 3 speed, that just as zones come in, we're slowly ticking out of that red marker. And really doesn't matter. I think a lot of people see the red weekly income and just absolutely panic and lose their minds over it. It's really not a problem. Just give it a second and it'll come out of it. I think only if you get to like minus 50,000, then it kind of becomes a serious issue. Then you get like the bankruptcy bailout option. But until then, it just really doesn't matter. Cool. Okay, here we go. Here's our first sims coming in. All the people arriving. Very exciting indeed. Very exciting. Here we go. I love these sorts of houses here as well. These look really nicely in repeated rows if you can get them in. Either way, it is fun, isn't it? Here we go. I am smiling so much. Absolutely love the start of a new vanilla build. Cool, so if these guys are all whinging about not enough power, then we'll just delete them and rezone them down so they jump through the power, but we'll be making money soon enough anyway, so we can just draw a power line over. But it won't be an issue. We'll just wait for the natural connection to take place. It's growing up, isn't it? It's tremendously exciting. So don't forget, guys, to get your name suggestions for this city down in the comments below. We will pick the most voted at the start of next episode. If you'd like to contribute to the name of the city, now is your chance. But really, it's all about waiting for that milestone, isn't it? So let's have a look at the first one. We hit Little Hamlet, which gives us taxes, loans, garbage, healthcare, and education, which is great. Got some new buildings, which are important. We place some of these down straight away. And then everything else is pretty good so far. Wonderful. So let's have a little look at some of these buildings, shall we? So we just unlocked garbage collection as a service, which is something that we need to immediately place down. Again, it's going to be part of a pretty minging industrial area for starting out with, until we can get over here properly and place something down here. So that's going to be great. We now have a recycling center. This does come with the Green Cities DLC. And it's a cleaner alternative. You don't have to empty it out like the base game landfill site. So if you have Green Cities, there's no real reason why you shouldn't place the recycling center first. It's lower capacity, but it renews and produces goods for the city as well. It's just much better than the landfill site. But if you don't have it, then use the regular landfill. So we did also just unlock some taxes. This is now a good point to move everyone up to 12%, because that's going to be the threshold that they're happy to pay. Any higher than that, you will start getting warnings saying that there isn't enough tax. You can see in the background there that we now have some utility warnings. This is simply just a funding issue. So we want to come back in and raise these up to about 60%, 62% I'll go for. I should see them clear off. There they go. Tremendous. And then we also unlocked loans, didn't we? So we can take a loan. Again, I see some people a little bit reluctant to take loans. It's free real estate. There's no real reason why. You'll just pay the loan back in a very incremental amount each month. You won't really notice that expenditure coming out of your budget. Okay, wonderful. So we also unlocked schools as well. So there's a couple of options available to us with schools. Thanks to the DLCs and the European theme that we also have active here. And again, let's kind of just have a little glance now over the thought process of placing a school within a suburb. You could absolutely just come and chuck it here, right, and have it on a road and it's just there by itself, but that's not really what schools look like in the world that we live in. So why don't we see if we can do something a little bit cool with them. So I'm definitely appreciating this one-way system vibe here. So let's keep this going up here for a little bit longer. Then we'll also bring it down this one as well. Okay, and then we can connect into our local roads again using this median here to function as our collector system back onto the one-way network. And we'll hopefully see some people starting to use this as more people move over this side of the city. But what I am envisioning is the fact that these people are going to be driving past the school on this one-way network. So that's what I'd like to factor in. Let's have some more houses along this way. Okay, and then we'll use this little box here as an area for our school to develop. So let's place it down. So there's a few different options. Really the variations of student capacity and funding per week based on aesthetics. I think the elementary school variations don't really have a vast amount of difference between them. It's just what we mentioned with the stats. So I'm going to place down a community school from the Green Cities DLC. It's slightly more expensive, but it does look very nice. So I'm just going to leave this here, right? I want this entire box to remain empty until we can get some detailing in, which is a population of 1500. Because I want to create a little school park here that looks out onto our main road, and we can detail this all up eventually. If you want to just go ahead and chuck it down on a road in and amongst all the houses, you can do, but I find you just develop more personality in especially a vanilla city by doing it like this. But no, everyone's going to have a personal preference. So let's get some more of these zonings in where we can have it. I want housing facing into the school campus. I'm happy for that to develop. And then we've also got a bunch more industry demand coming in, so let's go ahead and get that zoned up too. Everyone function here. You might be wondering why I am getting no purple pollution. I'm using a mod called Hide It to fix that. It's called here. You come down toward the bottom, you will notice that I am hiding pollution fog and destroyed areas are all turned off. So it just turns off that horrible, nasty, rancid, purple, yellowish pollution that comes from the vanilla industry. It's just, yeah, it's just not for me. If you want to play with it on, you can, but it really murders it for me. Okay, so we can see we're running into some utility issues here. I imagine, again, it's going to be a funding issue. Let's go up to 73% this time for the both of them. Okay, it's just going to help us save a little bit of money. And we'll just leave you again with 3 speed. And again, I think a lot of people sort of dive into this game thinking it's a race, and it isn't at all. Just chill out, take your time. Sort of envision what's going to happen next, where your next roads are going to go, what's going to happen with the suburbs around them. And then just take a look at what's happening with your commercial. Is there anything that you're enjoying? I just happen to have a lot of car parking generate on this little main street here. And that for me gives me a really cool aesthetic. It gives me like a much more commercially focused vibe. Again, especially in vanilla. I really appreciate that look. So they're all going to remain historical for me. And then we can have these commercials over here. We're already at our second milestone. Yes, please, everyone. So we get a new tile, which we won't need yet. We do also get districts and policies. We'll cover all of these as the build guide progresses. Got some emergency services now as well, which is very good. And then we also have the forestry specialization, agriculture, and some self-sufficient buildings from green cities, lots of new assets, which is cool. We've got some new the content creator stuff in here as well, like the Hearts of Korea stuff coming in. So there's some new options available from the start of the game now, which is really interesting for me as well, because I haven't played a vanilla build, or the start of a vanilla build for so long. Cool, so we got some big commercial demand spiking now, so let's make sure that we meet that along this main road. I'm happy for this to sort of be like the commercial center of this area, and this road will eventually spill into that river waterfront, so it's going to make sense for it to remain here. Yes, that's wonderful, that's fine. So this is all growing up to make sure that commercial demand's coming in. So we did unlock medical in the last milestone, but we don't really need medical. It's kind of a little bit of a gammy mechanic at the minute. Sort of medicine is they're basically just parks. People don't really get sick and die unless you make them by feeding them sewage water, for example. And they're kind of expensive as well. It's like £400 a week, is it? Yeah, for the med clinic. It's like nearly a third of our budget. It's really expensive. We don't need them yet. But we do want police and fire though. So let's have a look what's happening here. So we have the historical police station, which is a small town police station from the early 1900s. This comes with the Seaside Resorts content creator pack of this police station. So this to me, rather than looking like a police station, it kind of looks like a church, doesn't it? It kind of has like an old church vibe in it. So, in the spirit of the build guide, we're going to turn our police station into a church. Okay? So let's see where would be a good opportunity to do this. Let's now start feeding together some of our existing sort of dead frames so we can just start to get a sense of scale and positioning as to how this first suburb is going to sort of round itself out, if you like. So I'm thinking I'm pretty happy with this. Now I think like the church, historically I imagine it would have been on the main street. So why don't we see if we can sort of factor that in. Let's go ahead and bring out another road. And we'll just go for this one for right now. So let's go for that wide sidewalk one. Okay, then we'll have this here. And then I'd like perhaps a little dirt road that holds our church to come out facing this main road. And then let's jump back into the police department stuff again. And again, I can see that the front of the church where the steeple or the spire would be is the bit that I want to face out onto Main Street. So I'm going to pawn that in as well. So I'm going to bring in a road so I can hold the asset at a different angle. And it looks like that's just going to wrap up near perfectly now. And then I can repurpose the police station here into a little old historical church that sits off of my main street. I think that's appropriate, right? So be creative with the assets that you have at your disposal as well. You know, if you're playing with all these content creator packs now, there's so much for you to get involved with in the vanilla game these days. But I think that kind of functions as a cute little church, right? Sort of looking out onto the main street here. I think I'm going to keep that in. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Again, I'm just going to glance over any zonings that have come in that I do like the look of and make them historical. You see again, we've hit a utility issue. This will be more funding. So it's come up to 85% now. Or 84, that'll do. And everyone clears up, everyone's happy. Tremendous. Let's have a look at our fire station now as well. So again, the fire station sort of looks like a church. Let's just have a little look at it here before we place it somewhere. It just screams church, doesn't it? Like a little old sort of like Midwest American church. Really does. It really does. So again, I think I want to kind of use this in a similar sort of thought process. So why don't we do this one? Maybe over here a little bit. So let's have a little look where we could possibly squeeze this in. And you know, don't be afraid as well to remove zonings if you've already zoned them up. I think a lot of the time people get locked into this idea that once something is down you can't remove it, and that's really not true. So let's see, why don't we see if we can mark out a little sort of road boundary here now as the town is going to expand. So I know that I want this to come up. Let's hit a road guideline and let's go for this one there. I'd like to come on to another road guideline as the road develops out this way. Like that, and then we know that our one-way system will probably hook into this road at some point, if not curve away and help support that road. And then this one can go off on an angle now and just spread off down there to eventually hook into perhaps another little supplementary highway interchange here, again to help alleviate the pressure off of this one. So again, all about future planning, really helpful. So with these roads now, let's go ahead and wrap everything into the new frames. This collector system can feed into the arterial. Let's go for that one there. And then we'll use perhaps this space here as an opportunity to develop another little churchyard, maybe. Maybe rival churches if you want to add in a little bit of lore. Maybe, you know, one prefers Jesus, the other one prefers God, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what sort of debates go on. But we can have that one in there. Again, do I want to perhaps knock that back and make it a little bit more important? Let's do a little T-frame at the head of this road to hold the asset. We'll place that fire station one back down again. Then we can remove those frames and the asset will remain connected. Once we get some bushes and some trees and perhaps a little bit of fencing, and that will seem a little bit more organic. And of course, at the end of the day, it is actually providing fire service for the city, which is what it needs, it's what it wants to grow. And it's going to keep everyone wonderfully happy, isn't it? There we go. Tremendous. Okay, so industrial area is slowly growing up. And I don't really want this to get too out of hand because it'll all be being ripped out probably next episode when we come to do the farm build. Yes, wonderful. Yeah, so our tier 2 and above patrons will be helping decide the sort of direction of this series, what build comes next, how we flow and how it grows via polls on Patreon. So if you enjoy the content at all and would like to help support the channel from as little as £2 a month, it's like super cheap, you can come and get involved in the community. And yeah, just get involved and support the channel. Appreciate you all. It's crazy how many patrons we have now. It's like really, really nuts. But it's coming on together, isn't it? Right? Seeing these frames established now. Everything's growing up. You'll notice I'm saving spaces specifically for green belts to develop. Definitely sort of through here we want people to be able to walk. So let's carry on now, bringing in these roads down onto that main road. There we go. And then keep those zonings coming in. So again, factoring in what I know I want to sit against this road here. I want it to be lots of commercial. So I don't really want residential sitting there. Again, it's all about planning for future builds, making sure everyone is accounted for and happy and whatnot. So let's keep all these going in. Yep, happy for more zonings to be along here as well. You can specifically zone these spaces if you like to do 4x4 lots. But it's not too bad an aesthetic here, I don't think. I'm happy for the mix and match of styles and housings to develop. Be a nice happy little suburb anyway. Eventually they'll hopefully be walking to work. We'll get lots of elevated pathways back and two across here. Looks like we're about to hit that power threshold again, does it? Yes it does. So let's come back up to 100% now. There we go, one more. And then the same with the water as well, because that warning will pop back up again in a minute. So once you've kind of micromanaged the budget sliders in the early game, it's very rare you'll ever do it again just because of the way the game makes money. Like I'm pretty much sorted for money now for the rest of the series. Yeah, it's not too challenging just to get out of that initial red. It's absolutely fine. Wonderful, right? Everything's going up now. Ignore the industry area, it looks crap. It looks really bad. But either way, we're just waiting for that milestone to come in. We're about 30 people away from it now, and then we'll have a look at some detailing options, and then we can head towards the Build Guide 2's first detailing time lapse of this series. Really hope you guys are looking forward to this as much as I am. I love playing vanilla. And there it is, Tiny Town, which gives us park areas, industry areas, pedestrian areas, so much stuff. It's really fun that we get pedestrian areas so early as well. And then parks and plazas, super important. And then yeah, lots of new roads to play with, which is very nice, and a bunch of new park assets. So it's fancy, right? We're going to be getting some nice things happening here. So let's start placing in some parks. Let's go ahead and place in a large playground if we can. Let's see where would be a nice spot for this. Probably here, I imagine. So let's remove that one there. And then we'll place this in. So some of these parts can be expanded with vanilla pathway. So I'm going to draw this one up and into there like that. That should be pretty spicy. I'm going to do the same over here again as well. So it's going to provide a walkability spot back onto that car park there. It's also going to buff the land value for us as well. So I'm happy with that, I think. Let's now talk about kind of the master green belt that I have envisioned for this area. So we're going to start out with a vanilla dirt pathway. We're going to snap into our grid at that angle, and I want to connect people through this side. And then we're going to come along the back of the houses here. And then I just want to go into a freeform tool with no grid snapping now. And then just allow this sort of green pathway to meander through these spaces and hit several different sort of crossroad points at different times. Hook it through to there. Over there, sort of hook it into all the important corners where they will be likely to walk. Over here, for example. And then definitely have one back through there too. We did save some spaces in our initial zonings, didn't we, for some of those walkability palettes to come back through, so we'll do that as well. This can look a little bit bland on its own. What you can do if you have the Industries DLC is bring in a little bit of forestry fencing, and then just line up some of these little alleys with a little bit of forestry fence, and it brings them just a touch more sort of personality. Okay, that's all it's really about for me, is sort of adding in little nuances and areas that you know you've added in and that are there. And you just, and I know it sounds kind of maybe a little bit silly, but just little bits of personality make a massive difference to a vanilla city. Okay, we've now just got this little sort of cut through with a couple of live oaks next to it with a little bit of fencing. Super simple, but you'll already see the AI choosing to walk around town, and hopefully they'll be picking up our pathway across the street here now too, which is amazing. That's so nice. We've seen people walk, and then definitely just want lots of sort of sporadic live oak placement around here. Okay, not too dense with the trees in this part of town. And I think just sort of around them, you notice I'm almost going to be exclusively using the content creator trees for this. They're just, they're so much better. And then just a little bit of long grass around the base of the trees, and then perhaps some wild hedges in the green space in between. Some of the vanilla trees can be welcome. They're not all horrible. I don't mind the vanilla bush, for example, for a little slightly brighter variant of green, if you like. Okay, and then before we know it, as we sort of let the town grow, we'll just have this little green barrier between what is and will continue to get busier road, straight off of the highway, of course. But it's also given a little bit of walkability back and two across this area. I think what we might do is prepare the pathway over the road, but because I imagine eventually these will become high-speed highway roads to help encourage people to use them. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But we will eventually have a pedestrian bridge over into the farmland, which will reside over here. So again, you know, I'm planning exactly where I want the walkability to develop. I'm happy with that. Okay. But I'm enjoying this green belt. This is the exact vision I had in mind here. This roundabout splitting off into a one-way network, and then it sort of is met by green belt, and then you see the suburb through the live oaks. I had a very distinctive vision for that. So hopefully we managed to meet it. Let's come in with some what they called wild hedges around our churches now, and we'll get some sort of patterns in around here. So I'm going to use the prop line tool, and this, if you are familiar with the channel, you've seen me use this mod a million times. It's really something I think should be in the sort of base game functionality of the engine, to place props and trees in a row without having to do it by hand. Again, it doesn't affect the gameplay, it just takes longer if you're going to do it by hand. Okay, but I think a little bush lining just next to our little church here is going to work absolutely wonders. I'm going to place in a little live oak behind it. Maybe a pine and then another live oak. And then we also have some car parking now, courtesy of the content creator pack. So these carports, they come with the modern mid-century content creator pack. And they will serve as parks, but of course they are sort of aesthetic parking, which is massively appreciated in the vanilla game. So we can now do some fun things with these. So I'm just going to place in a single carport next to my little church here. So it looks like the church has some form of parking, which I think is appreciated in the long run, I think. Let's continue to sort of detail up our little main street here together. So let's come back in for some more wild hedging. Use the prop line tool to fix it. I believe there is an updated prop line tool now. This one I'm actually using is kind of an outdated one, but it still works for me. There is sort of a fresh one that works with the new prop anarchies, but you're getting into the world of pretty modded gameplay there, so it doesn't really apply to me. But again, I think just a little bit of sort of wild hedge lining around the edge of our key assets like this can just help highlight them a little bit. Let's go for that. Let's place in 2 more of those car parking ports over here as well, if we can find an appropriate spot for them. Okay, so it's increasing happiness because they are parks after all. Okay, the game will read them as a park. And then I think perhaps a little pattern of these are the lindens, the horse chestnuts maybe? Maybe a little repetition of the horse chestnuts around the back here, just to help highlight this sort of ringed area. Before you know it, that church now has a lot more sort of eye-drawing ability, doesn't it? I hope that makes sense, alright? And then once we do actually come back in to wrap up the road network around it, to wrap up that road frame that we've started to develop out here, it will sit a lot more organically within the design. So if I wanted to have another road that ran back here, and eventually we will expand our suburbia out this way to fill this space to the highway, But if I were to say we've saved, what, 3 tiles between the road there, let's make sure we save 3 tiles this side as well. And then we can now zone a little bit more commercial along our main street here. Let's perhaps also get a park asset in as well. The dog park. The dog park is extremely placeable, isn't it? There we go. Yes, please, everyone. Tremendous. Cool. So we've got a dog park in now, and as the commercial grows up alongside it, I think it's definitely a nice little bit of corner commercial growing up along here too. And perhaps we want to extend that wild hedge pattern, do we? We possibly do. At least so it runs the duration of the main road. But you can see now as it embeds along the main street, as the main street carries on growing, it has a lot more personality, doesn't it? Well, that makes sense. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot today, but it's how we like to play. Okay, so we've now just got this little churchyard alongside our main street here, and I'm really happy with that. Of course, it's a police station, but we can definitely get away with the fact that it is a church, just because of its aesthetic. I think I'm pretty happy with it. Cool, but look at this nice busy main street now. It's wonderful. Eventually, we might turn off a lot of these traffic lights, especially in vanilla. They tend to just cause more issues than they solve. But again, we'll come to cover that over the course of this series as we encounter those problems. Let's head over towards the school. I got a little bit of garbage collection issue here, and this shouldn't be a major problem. I'm just really waiting for the garbage trucks to get out here. See them coming into the suburb now to hopefully head toward those houses. Yeah, there they go. So let's talk about our school campus for the first time. These things, again, I like to make a little bit more of a song and dance out of them. So let's go ahead and combine this with a park asset, because we're surrounded by residential right now. These guys would love a park next to them. Let's grab a small playground. That's going to be great there, isn't it? Yes, it is. I think I'm pretty happy with that. So we can have a small playground directly behind the school. I think I might even appreciate a little dirt road that actually comes into the campus itself. We may even upgrade this at a later date to a different type of road, but for right now, dirt will do me. And then I'd like to just switch it around. There we go. Cool. And then I'd like to use a gravel pathway here to draw out kind of a mini mock sports field. You can do whatever you want, sort of sports you like. I'm going to go for perhaps a little baseball field here. Why don't we go for 50 either side? And then we can do a nice little curve. 70. And then maybe a little branch coming out here. Kind of a small baseball field, isn't it? They might want a little bit more room. Let's go for 40 instead. And we'll see if we can bring that into fruition. There we go. That's a little bit more realistic, isn't it? Let's use our park fencing, and I want to snap this into the grid. Okay, and then bring this around the sort of edge of our school campus. And then wrap it all up. Okay, I think also a line of live oaks using our prop line tool, well again you can do it by hand if you want to, would be appreciated here, I think. Okay, perhaps a little bit of privacy for the school. And then we'll have it run around the edge. That's going to be fantastic. And when we do actually come to unlock park life areas, which we do have park life areas when we create a park area, but we won't cover those today. A lot of the assets from here, like the chessboard or the trampoline park or the playground, work really nicely in these sorts of school campuses. So, you know, don't be afraid of them, basically, is the take-home point. Let's have a look at a few more of those carports again as well. It's an enormous sort of quality of life feature having parking available from the get-go in vanilla. I'm really interested to see how this affects our building style using these carports everywhere. So we'll have a carport in the school. And then within our prop menu, under the park tab, there's a whole bunch of little props in here that we can piece together in order to create a fairly convincing sort of playground for the children that live here. Well, not live here, attend here, obviously. And then some benches and whatnot that we can stick around in this area. Make it look a little bit more lived in, at least. And then just this little block now to sit within the suburb gives us a much more convincing school, doesn't it? I hope, at least anyway, that this sort of brings it together and sort of hammers home the point of the build guide is that we look to build, we don't zone, and just place assets down. Okay, but again, just observing what's happening on my main street, I absolutely love that that Sky Trust bank has come in with the car parking next to it, and we just get this Nice little main street now, right? Rather than mass zoning and letting whatever we want to come in, please pay attention to your commercial. It makes an enormous difference. Real huge difference when you don't let the disgusting vanilla assets absolutely dominate your initial skyline. Something I really found to be quite liberating from playing the game in that particular way. Okay, cool. However guys, this does feel like a good place for our first ever build guide to a detail and time lapse, where I'm just going to tie up some green belt spaces, bring in some zonings and tie things together with some repeated patterns in our one-way network to make it look a little bit fancier and landscaped. And I think as well we did actually unlock the 3-lane one-way road, didn't we? Last milestone. We definitely want to upgrade our roundabout into the 3-lane version because we're going to get that dedicated turn off, which is really helpful for the traffic AI to not be an absolute idiot, although that one has distance too short. So it's incredibly annoying. That's just because the node is a little bit too close, but we will fix that during our design time lapse once it here and do it now. But yes, that will help with the lane maths, just having them have a dedicated turn lane to get off onto the highway again. But otherwise, let's detail up the start of the build guide, and then we'll be right back. Okay guys, so let's have a brief look at what's happened during our detailing time lapse. So in and around the one-way network, we've gone with a very heavy wild hedge lining and repeated eastern cottonwood pattern, and also a little bit of commercial here as well, just so our power jumps through. We'll eventually replace this with an earthquake center once we unlock it, but we're not quite there yet. But yes, then we have our first pathway coming over here. So there's lots of fertile land. The next episode we'll probably do a farm build and sort of fill this space with some nice farm designs and get rid of this crap looking generic industry and replace it with something that actually looks good. And then our greenbelt continues to flow over here as the suburb develops. As we head into the main street, we've got a nice little sort of fencing on one side with a little diner on the way into town, which I thought was quite appropriate, just off of the highway. And then a little live oak pattern. And when we come into our little commercial zone into here now as well, and I hope you just agree that making assets historical like this that really fit in with your theme and the aesthetic makes a huge difference to the way that a high street looks. Just look how much more personable and curated this looks now from down on the street level. No horrible, nasty vanilla assets that have been allowed to grow. Got nice bits of like fast food and delis and little hedges and car parking out here, so really take time to consider what is allowed to be a part of your main street on the commercial areas. Makes an enormous difference to the way that a build looks. And then we have our little church area in here now. Absolutely love the idea of repurposing these seaside resort stuff into the sort of church vibe that we're trying to go through here. I think these are seaside resorts, aren't they? Or modern mid-century? I'm pretty sure they're seaside resorts. I'm pretty sure earlier in the episode I said modern mid-century, actually, didn't I? And then we also were getting some high school education demands. So in a similar vein to our elementary school over here, which of course has now been detailed up, where we have a little park next to it and some car parking. Exactly the same process with the high school. Dropped in a little hedge garden next door to it, and then a couple of little car parking ports and a basketball court around the back. Just combine your service assets with different things, and I hope you agree, just from whatever angle you look at it, it just looks like a mini little complex now, doesn't it? That's associated with the school, rather than just the school on a road on its own next to a load of mass zone commercial. Hope you sort of get the point there. And then we come down the street, which is all very fun. He really curated, you know, exactly what assets are allowed to be part of this. And it comes in nicely. It also dropped in the med clinic as well, just because the budget could start to support it. This is just the regular European one. Yeah, so we just got that in now, and we've got mega industry demand in the city right now. So definitely an industrial build next episode. Also a little bit of power consumption as well, so just increase my power budget again. I've avoided placing another power plant off camera, just so we can do it together when we come to do our industry next episode. So I'll just keep increasing the slider. And then we have our little secondary church over here as well, where we've used the fire station at the end of a little dirt road with some car parking next door to it. And I hope it sort of hammers home the vibe, right? I think it's pretty appropriate, pretty cute. It's kind of repurposed these as like old churches. You know, perhaps where this is an older part of town, maybe where the town was once founded. And if you want to get into a little bit of lore about your own city, then of course you can do. And then as we follow the one-way network around, we just see this bush and eastern cottonwood pattern run. And we'll keep this going throughout the entire city, at least this first starting suburb as well, until this one-way network eventually reaches the downtown. Which will give us a really cool sort of landscaped look as this traffic flow system meanders through the suburb and things grow on the other side of it. It'll really come together. Otherwise, guys, that is going to do it for the first episode of our brand new vanilla series. If you've enjoyed it, likes, comments and shares below really do help me out. Equally much if you haven't enjoyed it, then please feel free to leave a dislike as well. I've mentioned several times today there are links down to Instant Gaming below if you're missing any of the DLC or content creator packs that we've used in this episode and will continue to use throughout this series. And do go pick them up at Instant Gaming, super cheap, and it does help support me. And if you'd like to help support the channel further, like I mentioned, there are Patreon links down below. You guys can support the channel from as little as £2 a month and also get involved in how the builds grow and what comes next, and get some sort of behind the scenes screenshots and access to save files and whatnot, depending on what tier you go for. All those links are down below. Please do check them out if you're interested. And I hope you've enjoyed the start of our new build. Really nice map from Sidai. Really looking forward to expanding this and getting stuck into some different builds and a temperate theme for the first time since the first build guide, which was 4 years ago now. Which is crazy. Many more of my series will also be linked below if you are brand new to the channel, and we do a lot of vanilla city skylines here and some modded as well. So if you've enjoyed the playstyle and want to see more of it, please do go ahead and check out all those playlists linked down below. Please enjoy a little cinematic pan of today's build, but I will shut up and leave it there. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.